I like it. I love starting off with a little chuckle. But okay, the eyelash phenomenon, the
Oh
makeup,
shoot.
the earrings. Why?
Uh-oh. I got
Uh-oh.
the earrings,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Uh-huh.
I have a little bit of makeup. I've never been on an eyelash trend. No, I take that back. I have had eyelashes done, but I like the more natural kind of looking lash as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the snuffleupagus. That shows you how old I am. Um,
Not snuffy.
yeah. So I'm okay with the eyelashes, and I found too when I had lashes, I really didn't need makeup. It just brings something out in your face, so you don't really need to wear makeup if you have the lashes.
Right.
Um, Makeup, I'm okay with as well. I just think everything needs to be done. Well, for me, I prefer makeup that looks more natural, not necessarily so much that you're trying to change your entire look and look like a whole different person.
Ah.
Because when you take it off, I've seen some scary before and afters. So,
Oh, there's a trend going around. I really hate that word. I don't know if it's a trend or not. I saw something on the internet, okay, of these guys who are allowing some of them as their daughters who are like Hollywood level makeup artists, and literally
mhm,
changing from guys to women or
mhm.
guys to a monster or someone who's like got gashes and like man, it's just incredible what y'all are able to do. But I was always curious because for me it's like man, that's so much work. Like I look at
Mhm.
y'all's heels, and I just think, man, get you some flats. You're still beautiful in flats. Like, is that to appeal to men? Is it just like I feel good when I wear this stuff, or some combination?
I think it's a combination of both. As I think as women in general across the board, we put makeup on or put nice clothes on, it does make us feel good. But the other part of it too is attention. I think attention seeking is just part of our nature. And not necessarily it has to be like bad attention. It's just like, oh girl, you look nice, stuff like that. It
Right.
it feels good, so I think a lot of women are doing that to spruce themselves up and look like they've taken the time and energy to put in to take care of themselves and be presentable when they leave the house. But I like for me, I've never been into like makeup like that. I usually wear it on special occasions just because I enjoy sleeping until the last minute, and then getting up and get ready and trying to put makeup on and all of that takes away time from that.
Hmm.
So then my husband don't particularly care for makeup like that either. So
Right. So this next question or this next theme, it doesn't really apply to us because you, as you can see, their name is mistaken. He just mentioned your husband, and I myself am married, but out there, it's pretty wild, right? So here's a question that I've heard, which is, what do you get? What do you give the man who has everything?
the one thing that he doesn't have. And I think that's what it is that you need to figure out. So I remember so my brother, makes pretty decent money, right? So at Christmas, it was usually initially very difficult to think about what can you get, because anything you get him, he can buy. But the thing is that the gifts that he loves the most are gifts that are very meaningful and heartfelt, like related to things like one year I got him a Teenage Mutant Ninja t-shirt. And it was like, oh, just like, oh, because when
Right.
we were younger, that was his favorite cartoon, and him and I would sit and we would watch that together.
Oh,
So it was very sentimental. So meaningful things, I think, makes the biggest impact when somebody can get themselves whatever they want, is the time and attention that you take to think about the things that matter the most to them and try to do things in that arena.
Right. All right. Well, judges, I'm sorry that was the wrong answer. So here's the question again. What do you give a man who has everything? The answer is penicillin. There it is. All right, let's go ahead and start this thing. All right. Well, welcome back to another week of Urban Academia, to all my academiacs out there. Today I have with me the great, the wonderful, she's Miss Taken. She's going to drop some real wisdom for you single ladies out there, for you single men out there, for you men and women in relationships. So without further ado, I'm going to give it over to Miss Taken. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I have been married for 20 years. I have 2 children, and I am in education, and I'm originally from New York, but I now currently live in Atlanta, and I'm looking forward to this conversation today.
All right. All right.
What
Man,
else?
let me see. You say in New York. And
Yes.
wait, married for 20 years?
Mm-hmm.
You don't look old enough to have done anything for 20 years, let alone been
Well,
married
I'll take
for 20.
that. Yeah, we just did our hit our 20-year in August. August 17th is our was our 20-year anniversary, and we ended up renewing our vows in Seychelles. So I was very
Oh,
excited about that.
oh, man, so me and my wife kind of are, I guess, the haploid version of your of y'all. We are approaching our 10-year anniversary, so that's really cool.
Nice.
So that bleeds right into what we were talking about before we went live. This ideal that's out there, that there's an issue between men and women as far as relationships and just even encounters, um, there is an issue, it's a problem, and we're going to try to solve a little teensy corner of it today. But there was a statement made on another podcast that women need to change, I guess, how they move first, and then that will cause men to have this sort of thing click where we go, oh man, she's a good woman despite me being garbage, so I better change and be a good man. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally disagree with that. And I know everybody's gonna be like, oh, anytime I say anything contrary to what men say, I'm this feminist, like she's just such a feminist.
Mhm.
But the reason I say that is because accountability starts with you, right? And so this idea of saying if women just get their stuff together, if they keep their legs closed, if they do X, Y, and Z, then it'll make men, marry them, or it'll make men do, X, Y, and Z. And to me, I think that is not taking accountability. Um, when you're looking for someone to do something in order to keep you in check, that's the very opposite of self of accountability.
Yeah,
That's like
self-discipline, yeah.
punishment. Yeah. So that's why I say that I don't agree with that. Like, if you are in the mindset of wanting to do better, then you have to start with you. You have to begin to practice self discipline, whatever that is, whether it is eating right because you want to get healthier. If you want to find a wife, then you need to look at what things do I need to work on to be the husband that I'm going to need to be for somebody else. But
Right.
you can't look to other people to dictate the behavior that you need to develop.
That's interesting, and I feel like to sort of expand on that, you can't find anywhere else in society where we accept that sort of excuse.
Mm.
You know, hey, coach, if he would have done this, then I would have blocked that guy better. It doesn't happen in sports. It doesn't happen in school, right? Well, my friend was talking to me, so I got distracted. That's why I failed the test. Like, I can't really think of an example where it's okay to say because of this other thing or external thing happening, that's why I'm unable to change my ways, even though I know that I'm misbehaving, right?
Hmm.
It's a strange phenomenon that's kind of seeped into the psyche of men out there. This idea that the woman needs to do this, she needs to do that. I like your approach better, which is pretty much in line with the Bible, right? It's this ideal of individuals, right?
Hmm.
You worry about you. There's literally a verse that says, you know, take care of the plank in your eye before trying to remove a splinter in your brother's eye,
Right.
right? I mean, that's a current. I mean, that's a reoccurring thing.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so how do we get there? I guess I'm looking for the genesis of this sort of mindset.
Ooh, um, that's a great question. How do we get there? Um,
Yeah,
that
I'll
starts.
filibuster for you a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, Man, something has to have a beginning, right?
Right.
So we had, like, what can you think of a time where this wasn't a real issue, where men felt like it was their own responsibility to be responsible, and that would attract a good woman, and then you start a life, and then you together raise good children, and so on and so forth. Is that a
Well,
fair assessment?
yeah, I think the difference, what makes it much more harder, is because I think back in the day, and I don't mean like even way back, I'm like even when I was, younger, is I think this society as a whole collectively had at least a foundation that everybody kind of understood. It was just certain behaviors as a general, as a nation, that you did or didn't do, or if you were in church, it was just a certain foundational of behaviors that you did or didn't do. So it was very clear, and you did have outliers, but that's exactly what they were. They were the outliers, where the majority of everyone was kind of on the same page about certain, like, decorum and expectations of behavior as a society and as a whole. Um, but now I think we're on the opposite end of that spectrum, where is I guess this is a conundrum, kind of what we were talking about. It starts with yourself, but I think society reinforces it as well. Whereas now, I think society, it has flip flopped, and everything is about self. That we're not thinking as a collective to kind of impart some of that, to kind of hone it in with that behavior of expectations. It's just like everything is, I can do what I want. Doesn't matter what you're gonna do, boo. Like that kind of stuff. And so it's very hard to reel a group of individuals that have different mindsets in terms of what it is that they want to do and how they're gonna behave. And
Mhm.
then it's your responsibility to make me do better. You know what I'm saying? So that's what that confuses, is like, where do you start? I can only say it starts with you, but if you have a lot of individuals that's not willing to start,
Mm.
then where do you go?
Yeah. What do you say? First of all, I would like your definition of simp. So I've been on some shows where a few times now I've been labeled a simp because of the opinions that I've had. And every
Hmm.
time I do the same thing and I ask them to define what that actually means. And of course, it's like, there you go, talking that soft stuff. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, well, I don't know how to, do I cop to it or not? Because you can't even define what that means for me. It can't
I
mean just when
find
you
a lot of
disagree.
times, I'm so sorry. I
No,
didn't
no,
mean to
you're
cut
okay.
you.
No, go ahead.
I just find that a lot of times when that the idea of simp comes up is typically when a man kind of agrees with the women. So I
Mhm.
don't buy in on the idea of what simp is, because I see that it changed based on a point that somebody's making, or based on a man saying, no, I kind of understand what the women are saying, because as men, we need to do blah, 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 blah. But for me, what I understand simp to be is a man who allows a woman to just kind of walk all over him without necessarily receiving anything in return, that he's just giving, 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 she's receiving, receiving, and then not, he doesn't benefit from that interaction in any way. That's what I mean, I consider it to be.
I like it. See, now if someone was able to eloquently break that down for me, like Miss Take It, I would say, well, no, that's not true in our home. We have a pretty traditional marriage. We were both from the South. We both value kindness and believe in respect, no matter how people are treating you. That's just how we were raised, and that's how we were raising our children. And I do find in my older, as I get older, that it's a lot easier to teach people how to treat you.
Hmm.
Right. So it used to be when I was in a situation like that, I'm a big guy. I'm currently 6'4", 360 pounds. Right. It's
Hmm.
not good. Right. But big for no reason, as my wife says. But like the idea that I come across someone who is disrespectful, back in the day, it was like, please say it again. Right? Please say it again. You know what I mean? And but now as I've gotten older, it's just, I always treat it like, well, maybe they didn't mean to offend. So let's explore a little bit. And if they double down, it's like, okay, like I need to let them know that, hey, that was not very respectful of you to say. And if they triple down, then I just move on. But I
Hmm.
want to give everybody the chance to like maybe they had a bad burrito, and found out some bad
Right.
news, bad day, whatever. But I got this sort of mental flow chart that I act out, and I just kind of allow people to, put themselves in whatever position they see fit as far as me in my life.
Hmm.
So that's an interesting point, that it seems to change depending on the situation of the conversation.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
and being in these spaces, like I said, a lot of times that I hear it being thrown at certain people is when those people have the ability to kind of see things from both sides and say, okay, well, if we flip it on this, if a woman did blah blah blah, then it's like, oh yeah, they go simping. So I don't think it has anything, to do with that.
Mhm.
It's just that I think a lot of it, people in these spaces, like I said, I'm gonna keep saying these spaces because, like I told you on stage, that's not my reality. Men that I'm around don't particularly act like that. Not saying that they don't have some of the same views, which I do think as a collective group of men, there are just going to be some things that men do because they're men, or the way men see it. And that's okay. But is this idea of being so staunch about masculinity and what a man is, that you're so hard on being stuck that is very difficult for you to be able to see things from a different perspective. And the men who have the ability to do that, I find, are typically the men that everybody else say is a simp.
Man, that is so good. That is so good, man. You can find her at the Lapeef Network right there on YouTube. And was it the first Monday night on Humble Dad Podcast?
Yes.
Okay.
Of
Oh, so
every month. Every
we
month.
have the same
Yeah.
schedule now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, be sure to go check out so you can get this extended viewpoint from Miss Taken here, man. There are times we're on the panel and I feel like I try to stop myself from talking too much in the back chat. But
Hmm.
out of respect for the people who are speaking, like sometimes it's like, I gotta get this out. I
You
gotta
got to
get
get
this
it
out.
out.
What is this? What is this? Like, please explain, blah, 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 right? And I always
Hmm.
enjoy your takes back there. Um, One thing we talked about before was the co-opting of terms, right? Like this idea of stay woke. used to mean
Mhm.
something very specific for a very specific group of people. And it was
Mhm.
co-opted, and now it means this whole other thing, right? Just
What
be
does it
saying,
mean now?
well, woke out loud, right? This is the Republican way of sort of degrading the left, right? So you telling me that
Oh,
I can't say this and can't do that, you liberal snowflake, right? You leftist,
oh, okay.
right? Right. So this ideal of like the woke left, or now they're attacking,
Mhm.
Disney or whatever,
Mhm.
it used to mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is how I understood it. Like black people would pass each other, stay woke,
Whoa.
like
Yep.
don't sleep, pay attention,
Uh-huh.
just pay attention, just be
Right.
aware. Even when
Right.
you got it good, be aware that if things go bad, you will quickly know who you are to a lot of people around you. Things are going
Correct.
bad, like, hey, we got a way to pull ourselves up. Just pay attention,
Mhm.
make the best decisions you can. But yeah, so the co-opting of terms. I think the first thing we talked about was Christianity, right? Was
Mhm.
that you that kind of did like the half? No, I think I
Yeah.
asked you. Right. And so we talked about like what Christian means, which is just little anointed ones, right? We're trying to reflect
Mhm.
Christ. That's all that means. Everything else that gets attached to it is just a horrible job by Christian PRs, right?
Mhm.
We need a new PR agent. But I want to talk about feminism. You mentioned
Okay.
that earlier. And to my knowledge and my Google fingers, like feminism is simply the aim to establish equality for all genders in personal, social, economic, and political aspects. It's based on social theories, moral philosophies, and political activism.
Mhm.
So when you hear that, does one that sound like this thing that's destroying women from the inside? Or is this another issue of feminism? The term feminism has been co opted.
I think it's been co-opted in the ideology. The original ideology is basically what you expressed. Was the idea of being able to allow women the freedom to, operate in society without, uh, I would say, having to deal, I don't want to say deal with men, but under the patriarchy,
Mm-hmm.
trying to dismantle that idea to truly give us an opportunity to, become independent. Back then there was a lot of dependency on, in order for us to survive, we had to be attached to a man in order to do so. And if you didn't, it was very difficult life for women. I just found out recently that it wasn't until the 70, like 1970, that women were able to open up their own bank accounts. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, things like that. I was just like, wow, I couldn't even imagine living like that. But so I think the idea of feminism, I feel that it started off the right way. I think now this idea of it going to the extreme of being so independent and being able to do what I want to do is the opposite extreme. Just because, like, I should be able to go in a parking lot, get on top of a car and twerk, butt naked. Like, like that's not feminism. You know what I'm saying?
America.
Like, I don't like the fact that that is being associated with that. Or even this idea of men now are saying, oh, we're not going to offer protection. Y'all want equality. So if somebody beating you behind, just go ahead. Like, it's the extreme of
Mhm.
everything. And then everybody's trying to throw it under the umbrella of feminism. And that's not what feminism is.
The spaces in which that particular ideology, exists. I love that you said that it's not your reality. And this is
Mhm.
one of the things on other shows I keep bringing up. Like, hey, this isn't my reality. I am really interested to know like how women are in your spaces, but this is not what I'm seeing in my everyday life, right? And then this idea of saying women, this
Mhm.
catch-all, women need to do this, or women are. I hate broad brush terms when it comes to opinions,
Right.
right? Like facts, we can speak broadly. But
Mhm.
opinions, we have to be some women, right? Even if
Right.
you want to go as far as to say most women, but when you say, well, women don't want to listen, like your mom didn't listen, your grandmother, sister, aunt,
Mhm.
none of them, they're all terrible people.
Mhm.
That can't be true, right? So I love that. I love that. The idea that that's not feminism. So how do you
Right.
even begin to combat the co-opting of the term feminism?
Well, I don't think you can at this point in time, and the reason is because it's serving a purpose for other people. So that's kind of the way that it works, especially in a patriarch kind of mindset. Is I have to demonize the behavior to try to
Mhm,
shame you for the behavior, so you'll change the behavior and do what I ask. So is very difficult to reel that in. The only thing that I could say is that those who are not operating like that, which I think are majority of women, are not. Be you just keep moving in that mindset of you
mhm,
know being a woman. Most women want to be looked at as a you know like she got some sense. Nobody wants to be walked around like, oh, look at her. There are some, and I think those are the minority, but a lot of time to prove a point. Um, and I see that it happens on both sides. Women do it too. To prove a point, you'll look at the micro and blow it up as if it's the macro,
mhm.
um, just so you can prove a point.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
don't think that that's the reality for most people.
I agree. I agree, and I do believe it's that we all of us, we humans share this thing of I touch the stove to see if it was hot. Like, ah, man, that was hot. And now every stove I come across, I'm gonna treat it as if it were hot. And I
Mhm.
think one of the things we can start to repair the relationships between men and women is we one take some accountability and two try to educate ourselves on terms and different people's experiences. Because I'm with you. You mentioned the word feminism to some women, and it's like, ugh, those people. It's like,
Mhm.
well, like let's look at the. I wonder if they know the history of it, right? The idea that
Right.
women were like, "Hey guys, you guys have been treating us pretty poorly for a long time, and we wanted to stop." And they were like, "No." It's like, well, we really do want to stop, though. Please, will you stop? No. We
Mhm.
demand that you stop this. No, no. See, we live in a democracy, so we do everything by the vote. Oh, okay. So let me have the right to vote. No. It's like,
Mhm.
well, what do I do after that? They take a page out of men's notebooks in every large society, right? Once the I guess request is sort of denied, and then the vote is denied, and then the rights as citizens or humans is denied, then you all you have left is guerrilla warfare. And
Mhm.
so then you saw way back then they started to blow up buildings and all sorts of extreme things. They tried before that though to
Mhm.
do hunger strikes. And man, the king, I mean, I'm pretty sure it was the king, was locking women up and shoving tubes down there and force feeding them. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So it's like, what do we have to do to let y'all, like, to really make y'all understand that we want to be treated better? Like, that's what
Mhm.
feminism is, equal for both parts, which does include men.
And see, this is the other thing too, is that you have in some women, because I truly do believe that people are entitled to their own beliefs. But I think also a lack of knowledge, even for me, like I know in church, like my pastor always say, when I'm, pointing at you, I have three fingers pointing back at me, right?
Mhm,
So I do believe that we don't educate ourselves enough to know, and so it's easy to stand behind something when you have a lack of knowledge of it, right? Because a lot of the women who are saying, is this feminism stuff that got, women and trying to, and I don't even want to say trying to side with men or be, how everybody, oh, she's trying to be a pick me, that kind of stuff.
mhm,
I don't necessarily like that now, although there are some. Um, but I think it's a lack of knowledge because they don't understand that a lot of the life and freedoms that they do have now stemmed from feminism.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have no idea that, I mean, just the fact that you are going to school or allowed to go to school
Or
is
open a
the
bank
act,
account.
right? Exactly, is the act of feminism. So, so when they say, "Oh, I don't agree with it," and everybody keep talking about this patriarchy, there's some good aspects to this patriarchy. Well, a lot of times the reason we need a patriarchy, because they're
Mhm.
talking about protection. Who do we need protection from? That's the question. When you ask yourself, why would we even need a patriarchy? And
Right.
it's really to protect us from other men. But the fact that we even need that protection says something within itself about how men operate.
That's interesting. Like you want us to protect it from whom, sir? Right? Other men. Like,
Hmm.
but if women just, well, wait a minute now. Like it can't be both. It can't be both. I'm this king who is in total control, and I protect everyone, and I kill and things, and I lay them at your feet. And then like, but if a woman who's not my wife wants to have sex, like, what am I supposed to do? Say no?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I'm totally helpless in that, and
Right.
women are the ones who need to behave better. Yeah, that's interesting. But I do like that ideal of security from men. Is what you
Mhm.
guys are saying the patriarchy is for,
Right.
right? Like that's very interesting. Can we live in a society that we were in before, where you just have that patriarchal hierarchy, right? Um, but women still feel fulfilled and cared for and cared about.
Yeah. I I I absolutely do. See, when we say we want, well, this is how I interpret it to be, is that when we say there's an idea of wanting equality, it really boils down to being able to have the freedom of choice and access, right? So I think that's more of where the idea is, in terms of men are saying, "Oh, well, you want equality, so yeah, if I see somebody beating you up on the street, if it's a dude beating you up on, you want equality." Like, it's just to the extreme, and I don't like, like that aspect. So there's a difference between equality and equity, and I do believe that is a balance of both of those things. And it's like, well, if you want equality, then all the women should go to the military. They should be forced to go to the military too. Well, to be honest, I don't agree with men having to be forced to go to the military. That at 18 they have
Right.
to sign up and do that. I think it needs to be voluntary. So, and if there are women who are willing to volunteer, then again, that's equality, that's equity. I think that signing up at 18, that all men have to do that and they're forced to do that, I don't agree with that, especially in a democracy. I think you're always going to have people who are willing to put their lives on the line for others.
Mhm.
Um, and so, in that regard, it should be a free space where everybody has the opportunity to voluntarily sign up for the military.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Man, that is real good. How can we treat each other? Because you said there's a difference between equality and equability. So,
Right.
like equality, like I'm under the belief that men and women are equal in being, not in function.
So
So we
I
kind of,
agree with that as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we kind of fill in the gaps for each other. I mean, that's the idea of a marriage. Like you were preparing yourself for a husband, he's preparing himself for a wife, and you two literally complete each other. Right? You got
Hmm.
your own sets of circumstances, different hormones, different bodies. All these things become one, so y'all can move together as one unit. So the idea behind, I mean, this rubs a lot of people the wrong way, right? How the woman is supposed to be the helpmeet for the
Hmm.
man. But then Proverbs 31 kind of breaks it down to the myriad of ways that women can help the man and what the man should be doing as well to support the woman. And so Now when you guys go out, because of the life that you're living, you become a positive testimony for this,
Mhm.
Christian experience or the marriage experience. So I don't know, like, how do we begin to help people to understand or see it from our point of view?
Um, I remember I got so much pushback on this. I got the direct question was, well, do you think men and women are equal? And I was like, yeah. Oh my God, both men and women, we are not equal. And I was like, I, that's my belief. I believe that. I said, I think we are kind of like what you said. We are equal in essence, but not in responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I agree with you, is that I believe that that's the way that God intended. The problem is that I think people feel that difference mean deficit, and it
Ooh,
doesn't. Um, and so I'm like, yes, we're equal, but we're different. And that difference is what I was talking about in terms of function, like you said, in terms of responsibility. Those are differences, but it doesn't mean that because my responsibility is different from yours means that what I have to do is any less valuable than
Mhm.
what you have to do. Because if you didn't have my part, then your part couldn't get done, right?
Right.
Um, so that was the idea of what I was trying to state. But as soon as you said, yeah, we're equal, I mean, brain function shuts down. Nobody can think any further than that. It was just pandemonium. I'm like,
Oh my
gosh,
goodness.
equal, like, and then
Right,
God
right.
forbid you compare it to slavery. Why y'all always want to go to slavery? And
Oh
I was
man.
And for me, the reason I do that is because I think, especially us as Black people, can understand the idea of slavery and oppression and what that looks
Mhm.
like, right? But then when you compare it to the patriarchy, so to speak, and the idea of how it's oppression, and they lose their mind. Why are y'all acting like y'all are oppressed? Like y'all have the freedom to do X, Y, and D. Slaves didn't have the choice. Da, 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 and I'm like, well, there's a difference between a system that's set up for you not to have the choice versus you having the illusion that you really can choose to do. Like that's part of what white supremacy is about. And the patriarchy also is kind of set up under that same idea. The thing is, it's hard for you to see it when you're the one benefiting from it.
Ooh,
even
that's interesting.
even for me as a Christian living in America, that's one of the major religions. I understand, by me being a Christian, there's some level of benefit that I
Mhm.
get from that other people of other religions don't necessarily get to benefit from in the same way. So all of us have a level of where we're benefiting because we're the ones that are of the majority, or the system is set up to give us privileges that we may not necessarily think that we have, but we're
Mhm.
not aware of because we're not of that minority group.
Man, so these blind spots that we have in society,
Mhm.
I feel that's what you're speaking about. I
Mhm.
love the ideal of, there's in the South we will say, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right?
Mhm.
There's more than one way to enslave a person or people,
Mhm.
right? It really does start with the mind. Like, how else do you get a giant group of people doing exactly what you want them to do for free while in fear? And you are like, it's you, your wife, and your 4 kids,
Mhm.
right? Why? I mean, if aliens dropped down during slavery, it's like, why don't those guys being whipped just turn around and, you know, whip them back? Like, what's happening
Mhm.
here? But it's that mental hold you have over people. But I do
Right.
also like the example that you gave was like the corn versus carrot example, right? Like, I want to give my children the freedom, right, to choose what you want with this protein, right? What do you want to have for dinner? I'm going to allow you to choose. You're so big and strong and powerful. I'm going to let you choose. Would you like corn or carrots as a side? You know what I mean? So like either way, it's really a choice of our own making. Either way, we're gonna be happy with the choice. But for them, it makes
Mm,
them feel like, yes, that's right, Father. I am a prince. I
right.
choose carrots. I'll take those healthy carrots, not corn. Thus said
Right.
the 5-year-old. So yeah, how often are we falling prey to that mentality? Especially now when we move from crops in slavery and there afterwards to manufacturing, and then we've now moved from manufacturing to investing. Right, we're
Hmm.
becoming a country who owns a lot more things that are producing things, not
Hmm.
producing things ourselves. Um, how is it? Can a woman, I guess, support a man and a man support a woman in today's times, where it's not the same as it used to be? Like, come on out here
Hmm.
to the fields and help me work, right? Or it's not like I can work at General Motors and support a family of 5 off of my salary alone. You stay home with the children, right? Now we both have to work. How can we sort of begin to mend, or I guess change what it means to support each other in marriage?
Now, this part is where I really believe it's going to start with men in on their own in terms of
Mhm,
their own development, because we are now in a space where women, because we do have more freedoms, because we do have access to working and having jobs and having the potential to make enough money where we can financially take care of ourselves, right? So a lot of women don't necessarily need men for that specific area, right? And that's been what most men have been conditioned and accustomed to do, that it makes them a man. You are a man when you can financially, take care of your family and, that whole protecting and provision
mhm,
aspect. Um, but now, because women can literally provide for themselves, and I would even say offer themselves a level of protection now that you have, gun ownership and things like that, right?
mhm,
Um, where men are now finding themselves somewhat lost, because now what that does that mean when I have women that don't necessarily need me in the roles that I'm usually used to functioning in.
mm.
um, Women are demanding more on that, what is that, the hierarchy of needs, um,
Oh yeah.
where now they're going to have to operate on a higher level um, of themselves, which is going to require a change, and change is always hard. So now, as a female, we're demanding more of the aspects of being able to, we still need your protection and provision, but provide it in a different way. Like, I need you to be able to protect and provide for me emotionally. I need you to
Mhm,
be able to provide and protect for me mentally. Not to say that the physical part isn't necessary, that's always going to be there. But I think when you're looking at it from the day to day, that's on the bottom of the totem pole of the protection and provision on the physical sense.
mhm,
Because we've, as a society, has become a little more safer, so to speak.
right,
And we're, like you said, moving from the physical labor of things to more logical. So the physical part is still necessary, but is not as necessary on a day to day basis. So women are now asking men to pull from the hierarchy of that emotional, mental aspect of what you need to build connection in the relationship. And that's going to be a challenge for a lot of men, especially the way that they view it, because they view it as, oh, that's a woman's thing. Like that whole, we've been
there you
conditioned.
go simping. There you go simping again.
Yeah, that men have been conditioned not to be in touch with their feelings. Like the word feelings and emotion is just like this, ooh, foo, foo, female woman stuff. And I think that's part of why men are struggling.
Mhm. Well, repetition works.
Mhm.
Advertising works, right? The idea that diamonds were a trash product, the companies are about to go under. Someone comes up with a couple of campaigns. Diamonds are a woman's best friend. If you
Mhm.
really care about that woman, get her a diamond. Diamonds are forever.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, the value in which society saw that it had changed.
Mhm.
That's from campaigning, and
Right.
we still believe that today, right?
Mhm.
Um, the hierarchy that you were talking about is from Maslow,
Yes.
right? And so it starts off, and like you said, it's like try to picture a food pyramid. I'm talking to the audience here. Like if you picture a food pyramid, and at the bottom of that is like the physical needs, right? Food, water, shelter, stuff. Next is safety, protect your environment, protect your family, yourself, and then it's love and belonging, up to self esteem, and then self actualization. That's all the moral,
Mhm.
creativity, spontaneity, acceptance, things of that nature. And so, would you have said, does it just need to be reshuffled a little bit? Do we need to just turn it upside down? Because we as humans have, like, I mean, we've conquered the night, we've conquered the wild, right? So now everything does kind of happen up here.
Mhm.
So like how are we reshuffling that to kind of make it more, if you have a young man, it's like, man, I really like this woman, but I don't know how to approach her. Right. She's got her own job, right? I met her at the gun range. Right.
Mhm.
She's a former UFC fighter, whatever. Like I don't even know, like I do believe there are men out there who are like, I don't even know what I could offer this woman. But if I make her
I literally.
radioactive, but if I make her radioactive, then I can just go, see that feminism stuff, right? And then
Mhm.
move on to the women who haven't actualized themselves in that mature sort of way yet.
Yeah, I think a lot of men are, and I just realized words are triggers, right? Even for men
Right.
and women. Like when women hear the word submissive, that can be a trigger, right?
Uh-oh.
But I think when men hear women say independent, that is a trigger for them, because what they hear is, and not to say that there are some women that aren't presenting it that way as well,
Right.
but this idea of when I hear independent, that means there's no room for me, right?
Mhm.
I had a just recently, it was last Friday, I had went out with a group of friends, and it was one guy who was interested in one of the girls that was in the group, and he was like, well, she seemed a little masculine. And I'm like, why? And I was like, because I know her. She doesn't come across masculine. He was like, because, she was just telling, just saying exactly what it is that, what she want, what she's looking for. She got, these things. And it was just in a group setting. So we were just talking. It wasn't even like she was telling him directly. And
Ah.
so when we were leaving, him and I like kind of exchanged a little conversation as we were waiting. And I was like, so what makes you think that she's masculine? I said, and then when he said that, like she was just saying, what exactly she's looking for. I said, oh, so a decisive woman is masculine?
Whew.
And he was like, well, yeah. And I was like, wow, that was just the eye open. I was like, so you think most men think like that? He was like, yeah. And I was like, well, why? I said, because I would think that would be easier for you to filter out whether or not you would be compatible. Because if she knows that, at this stage of my life, I've done the travel, I've bought my own house, I've got that, it would make it easier for you to kind of, filter things out. Because if you're the type of man that you want to be the one to buy the house for the woman, then you automatically know, you know what, she's probably not my, ideal mate. And I was
Hmm.
like, but I think that's a you issue. And he looked like, why you said? I said, because if she's clear on what it is that she's looking for, and you're saying I can't find a way to fit in, then that's not on her. That's on you.
Hmm.
You're feeling insecure about that because in order to deal with her, you would have to operate differently than what you're normally used to doing.
Gotcha.
And so I think that's what happens. I think there's some women that are saying, I don't, I am independent, that INDEP, like all of that kind of stuff. You do have some women that present that like, boo, what can you do for me? I got my home. I got that. Like, and I don't think that's the right approach or attitude either. Because at that point, as a man, I would feel the same way. Okay, well, you good. All right, you got it.
Oh
But
my goodness.
I definitely think it's on us as women that if we are presenting that we don't need you in these areas,
Hmm.
is on us to express the areas we do need you.
Hmm.
When you just present one thing like, oh, I don't need your protection or provision, and you're really only talking about because I make my own money, I already have my own, house, I already have my own car, and you leave it at that, if that's the level of understanding that men have what protection and provision is, then you're doing a disservice by not further explaining, well, these are the areas that I'm looking for you to fit.
Hmm. Especially with the woman who's like, you don't have to have all this stuff now, but these
Mm-hmm.
are the things that I do want my man to be working towards,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you are put me in a very difficult position of serving as defender of Lil Bootsy.
Why?
So that song, if people remember what he was talking about in the song, is like, that's the woman I want, right? I
Mm-hmm.
don't need her, she don't need me, but we want each other, and that
Mm-hmm.
is far more valuable to Lil Bootsy and others like it, right? Because if
Mm-hmm.
you have this list, like I, I had a lot of, I guess, anxiety, fear, because I'm from a single parent home. My mother and father divorced, and so as I got older, I would recognize when I spend time with my father, like, wow, I hear about who he was and how he was, and I hear about my mom and how she was and who she was. It's like, how in the world did this not work? How did they
Mm-hmm.
get to a point where it got so visceral, right? And so for me, at first, I went from wanting to be married and having 1,000 kids to I'm not getting married at all. I don't want to risk giving all of myself to someone and then some mysterious thing just changes. And then I got older, right? And I was like, oh, I get it, right? If they're not communicating, if
Mm-hmm.
my mother is stomping on the dreams of my father, right? Doesn't know how to speak to him respectfully. My father goes seek, some sort of respect elsewhere, which is
Mm-hmm.
not showing, love for his wife. Like, okay, it's more complicated than I originally
Mm-hmm.
thought. And I remember my wife, my now wife, we would talk all the time about marriage. And I told her, like, yeah, I'm not going to get married till I have XYZ done. And she's like, well, that seems silly to me. Like, why would you not find somebody who cares about your XYZ and you care about her XYZ and y'all build that together? Like, you feel like you have to conquer the world before you allow yourself to get married. It's like, well, yeah, because a man should have this and that and that. It's like, no.
I think the man absolutely should have the mindset of that. And I think that's the difference. You don't necessarily have to have the physical things of, oh, I got to have my job, I got to have my house, I got to have this, and then she can move into that space. And this is the confusing part too, is that men say that, but then say at the same time, and the problem is, I'm hearing this in regards to Black women, so I'm gonna be specific, they only want to get to you when you at the finish line. well, make up your mind. Like you're saying, you want to build all of these things first so you could get a woman, and then you meet a woman, she gets, gets you, and he's like, oh, you only want the one with, this at the finish line. Like, make it make sense. It just doesn't. But I do believe that all men should have the mindset of that. Not that they necessarily have to have the physical things. And in that, they need to be looking for a woman that also have the mindset of knowing how to build together, like to assist in that, and being able to juggle. Even for men, like a lot of what I'm hearing too, I was just told recently that a man should never have to fit into a woman's idea of what it is she wants for her life. She should always have to fit into his. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense either. I was like, well, if y'all are coming together, you don't think that both people are going to have to make adjustments so y'all can fit? I was like, it would be, I don't think it's cool for a woman to just give up all of her dreams or hopes or whatever God has placed for her as her, what's the word that they were using? Uh, I can't think of the word.
You're talking about
Whatever,
fitting, submissive,
whatever.
adjust.
What is it? Their not their passion, but their oh, I cannot believe, but just basically what it is that they're supposed to carry, whatever their mission is, right?
Mhm.
That they're supposed to find a
Your
woman.
purpose.
Purpose. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Whatever their purpose is. Now, I am just not of the belief that God doesn't give, that God only give men a purpose, and the only purpose that he's given woman is a woman to support the man's purpose.
Right.
That's
Which is funny that you even say that. Like the redemption, the redemption arc for humanity begins with a woman's purpose. This
mm,
thing is about to happen to you, and she willfully accepts it. And then, Joseph had his own mind of what he was going to do. Being a good man, I'm going to quietly dismiss her. I don't want to be stoned to
mm,
death. And
right,
then he's visited by one of God's messengers, and he's given his purpose. He's confirming the purpose that's going to happen through Mary,
right.
right? Yeah. And I wonder if people who make those assessments, like, how do they think puzzles work?
I
Like,
listen. Look, me and you were here because I
oh,
even
this piece got
remember.
to fit me. I can't fit the piece. It's like, what? This,
Right,
we're
better
never going to
trim
get
this,
this right.
you know. But I remember even having a conversation because we were talking about um what was it? In terms of what does submission, no, help me, that's what it is. What that actually means biblically, and what it was saying, because I find a lot of times when we're talking about that, that is the idea that a lot of people have, is just that submission means I'm the head, you just do whatever I'm told, what you're told, or whatever it is that your purpose is to support whatever it is I'm telling you to do. And when I was like, okay, let me look up, because I'm one that I'm just not going to take what you say. And I actually got that from my husband. When I had met him, he was like, don't ever take anything on face value, right?
Right.
And so I've begun to develop that skill for myself. And so when I hear things and it doesn't necessarily line up right in the way that I think, I'm I'm not quick to be like, no, that's wrong. I am very quick to see, let me see if what's being said is right, you know.
Right.
And so when I had looked up the etymology, the original meaning of help me, I had came across some information that was saying how that word in its original Hebrew was saying that it had something to do with it was broken down in two words like Ezer or something like that.
Mm.
Ezer could I know I can't say it, but basically it was saying that it breaks down to a strength strength corresponding to him. And so, but they said when they translated, Ezer is typically translated as helper, as in a servant
Mhm.
in our language. But it's also used even in terms of when it's talking about God. So, I mean, so as I was just reading that whole article, I learned a lot and I was like, okay, here's the disconnect. In regards to truly having an understanding of what it being translated into our language mean versus what the intended purpose and idea behind that meant.
Right. Man, listen, you are barking up the right tree because I had those same concerns. I'm definitely a seeker. I had
Mm-hmm.
one of my Bible study, not Bible study, Sunday Bible school teachers tell me like you're a seeker. Like, and boy,
Mm-hmm.
when you don't understand something, you don't stop till you understand it. Right? Somebody gonna tell me some answers. But I came across like I didn't understand the difference between transcription, translation, and transliteration. You
Mm.
know? And so once I understood that, then I was able to see like why this word became this word in first Greek and then in English. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have, we don't have that word in our language. So let's just say it's
Right.
this word now. Right? I don't like how that word doesn't work in our language. Let's add some vowels in the consonants and change God's name. You
Right.
know what I mean? All these things, but you have to be a person who's one humble enough to say, I could be wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go seeking God, right? Seek ye first the kingdom
Mm-hmm.
of heaven. I think that's where you find your peace, your answers, and your tribe. Like I found mistaken, right? In one of the most like unlikely places. I was literally there like, what is happening? What is happening? What did I say? Like I'm really trying to figure out like what am I saying that's not quite connecting with these other gentlemen who look like me in similar situations, you know. But yeah, that's really cool. Like the actual etymology
Yeah,
of the
because
word
I think
itself.
that mindset, I think there's a mix of old school mindset
Hmm.
with new school behavior. And I
Hmm.
think trying to bridge those have been very difficult because you have older men, or I wouldn't even say that much older. If you were raised by older people under going to church with pastors who are of the old school mindset, you're still going to
Hmm.
keep getting those messages of what that looks like, right? And then
Hmm.
it also, again, if we kind of look at the patriarchy aspect, and let's be real, in the Bible, putting it at that time, that
Hmm.
was still patriarchy at that
Hmm.
time. So looking at it in the context and the historical context in which the Bible was written, things like that, that you're trying to hold on to that same idea in a world that doesn't necessarily work or function, or you have a better understanding of what the word is saying. Because
Hmm.
if you think about it, back then when we're looking at the historical concept, that Christianity was a new religion. So a
Hmm.
lot of people at that time did not have the level to or ability to even understand some of the stuff that he was saying. It was developing, it was new, and no, we're used to being, operating under this environment, under these laws, under these rules, and you're trying to come here and change it up.
Right.
So when you look at it from that perspective, you understand that this is the way these things were at this time, but how can we apply that now in a more modern sense and not have it lose the
Right.
essence of the meaning,
Hmm.
and as opposed to how it was expressed.
Yeah. Even Paul's account of circumcision, you know, he's saying, what good is it if you're gonna just be out here sinning?
Right.
A bit of it. And
Right.
so in Acts is where Paul is being held, accountable for those words. Like basically, hey, what's this out here about you telling people they don't have to get circumcised? And he explains himself in Acts, which is, man, a really cool book we're going through right now, actually. But the idea that the culture of the time was
Hmm.
an agreed upon culture is something
Correct.
I believe we're now currently missing.
Hmm.
And the once how America makes money changes, and we try to adjust the best we can, but still hold on to those old school values of
Right.
marriage, children, all those things. We haven't yet agreed upon how to do this together with this new set of rights for women.
Hmm.
Women didn't vote, like you said. Women couldn't get a bank account, right? Women, like, they just. But the ideal, even in that culture back then, during the biblical culture, those women seem to have felt fulfilled. I mean, all
Hmm.
the accounts in the Bible where, Paul is sending this woman out to, make way for him and spread the word, and which means she had to be on ships, with a group of people under her command. She had to
Hmm.
be well versed enough to adequately convey Paul's message from Christ. Like, it's a
Hmm.
lot going on that we just kind of skip over, right? Those
Right.
women felt fulfilled because they
Right.
were with their husband seeking God and in whatever way that their natural talents would allow. So
Right.
one of the things I tell my kids, I'm gonna ask you this. I want to be mindful of your time. I don't know how long I have you.
Okay.
Right? One of the things I tell my kids is when you can't figure out what you want to do, right? Your ultimate goal. Sometimes it's good to look at what you don't want to happen to sort of create these bookends, right?
Hmm.
If we're having troubles really comprehending our issues as men and women with each other, I like looking at who benefits from so much miscommunication.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
going to ask you that, Miss Taken. Who benefits from all this miscommunication of men need to be this to be man? If they not, they're scrubs, and women need to do this to be considered, marriage material. If not, then they just, bunch of pros out here running around, bunch of chicken
Do,
heads.
do you mean on a micro level or macro level?
Both. Let's go.
Mm.
Let's go. Micro
Mm.
and macro level. Who benefits from having us separated, right?
Well, on a macro level, I would say the government or the United States, because if I can keep you, I mean, history, shows it, right? Just historically, keeping the rich from the poor separated, keeping, the white poor from the slaves, it benefited. Oh, well, you're a little better than them because, you're white. How does that benefit? So they don't come together and rise up against the government, right? So that was
Mhm.
the idea behind that. And then I would say for us, keeping us separated, it creates environment of more workers. So you have more women going into the workplace as opposed to back in the day. They, stayed in the home and they took care of their families. They were their direct teachers to reinforce the things that were, important to them as a family. Now,
Mhm.
all of the kids are going to school and getting indoctrinated in a lot of messaging that we want them to be reinforced that the government or do you not, you know what I'm saying? So I think on the macro level, the government benefits from the separation because it prevents you from coming together and saying, you know what, this ain't working. Like we need to do something different, right? On the micro level,
Wait,
um,
before, excuse me, I hate to
go
interrupt
ahead.
you, but I wanna kind of dive into that before you go to the micro, right? The idea that the government is incentivized by people being split up, right?
Hmm.
Well, at some point in this country, it was against the law to have an extramarital affair.
Hmm.
right? Matter of fact, I'm about to Google see if it's still some states that have it on their books. So, ladies, listen up. We're gonna tell you the best states to live here in the. So, what states still have laws against extramarital affairs? Oh wow, I'm looking still 16 states as of this year. Wow.
Oh,
So, ladies, the Carolinas, Georgia, Mississippi, New York, Utah, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Idaho, Oklahoma, Massachusetts, Illinois, Kansas, Florida, funny, and Arizona,
mm,
where it's still illegal. Like there's some fine at the very least accrued when you can prove extramarital affairs. So when it incentivizes the country as far as our GDP to have married people stay together, right? Stay together, have a bunch of kids, raise your farm, give us the food so we can sell and make some money off of it.
mm-hmm.
And that shift, right? Now it's factory work, General Motors, Nissan, one person working, one person stay at home. You better not have an affair though, right? But now I can expand it by having a bunch of day traders over here, CEOs and all these different enterprises. So wow, yeah, I think you're definitely onto something there. But continue with the micro.
The micro, who does it benefit? Honestly, I think it would benefit men. And the reason I say, and I'm gonna be transparent in the fact that I know that I'm thinking through the lens of a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it benefits men because many times men get married because that's what women want, right?
Yeah.
But if we say we can't get to, let's say, come to an understanding, women are going to operate on their own. Men are able to still get their needs met because of this illusion or hanging carrot of, if I'm the woman that, is submissive and I'm the woman that do X, Y, and Z, then I can get the man. But his thing is, well, you need to jump through these hoops for me to even think about considering you, because now I have all these options. So you need to be fit, feminine, and friendly and freaky. You know what I'm saying? Like all of those things. And I need to be able to test all of those things out for a period of time before I
Mm-hmm.
could decide that you're worthy to get my last name. You know what I'm saying? And so then when you push for that, and then now you have women, girl, you better do this because what you want, another woman will,
Yep.
So I think in that regard, from looking from a female's perspective, that the man kind of benefits from this, because now I never have to marry. I still get my needs met and fulfilled because I can stay in this long-term relationship with
Mm-hmm.
getting all of the benefits without the responsibility.
Marital benefits without any of the marital responsibilities. I
Mm-hmm.
like that. Mistaken. I could talk to you for a few more hours, man, but go
Yes.
ahead and tell the people where they can find more content from you, where they can get some of this wisdom, and shout out one of your favorite podcasts now, Urban Academia.
Absolutely. Let me shout out to Urban Academia. I am on the Lapif Network on Fridays under Chic Critique, and we usually go on at around 10, but it all depends. But we have a discussion about, just various topics, typically about relationships in regards to Black men and women. And we'll look forward, add us to your list of podcasts.
Absolutely, man. I've already subscribed. Make sure you like, share, subscribe every Friday, and then catch her every first Monday on Humble Dad
Oh,
Podcast.
yeah. Yes.
I'm gonna put you in the back, but just hang on for 2 minutes more, and then we'll be all done here. Thank you so much for being on. Yeah, so that was Miss Taken. Man, it's always good to hear from someone with sense, with grace, and with wisdom. And remember, we talk often on the show about wisdom being comprised of 3 aspects, and that's experience, knowledge, and good judgment. And so I don't think that men and women hate each other as much as social media says we do. And if that's the case, and if you guys believe me like I believe you do, then we have to start working on some viable ways of rejoining and thriving. But hey, they say common sense ain't coming. So keep coming back each week to Urban Academia, and I will see you soon. Peace. For you. For you. For you.
David Ruffin limelight to stay in